News, Between the Whistles, Detroit Sports on YouTube, but Detroit Lions News podcast. So look, training camp begins Wednesday for the rookies. The rookies will report to training camp. Um, then shortly after, the veterans will report to training camp. This is a fun time. It'll be a lot of fun because this Detroit Lions team is expected to be a pretty damn good team. We all know that, and we all expect that to happen. Now, what I'm going to look at today is I'm going to look at what's the concerns I have with the Detroit Lions. Because I feel like there's some concerns in certain spots, but these are concerns I can't overlook ultimately because I think these are concerns that are valuable and they're valid concerns. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to start with the starting quarterback. Not the starting quarterback, the depth at quarterback. Because I look at depth at quarterback and I go, okay, if Jared Goff goes down for 2 to 3 games, who can step in? Now, we don't know if Hendon Hooker will be ready for the season. That's going to be one thing that we're going to monitor for this video. Nate Sudfeld, do I think he can be a guy who can step in and win you a few games? I don't. That's the problem. And, backup quarterbacks cost a lot of money. We all know that. But ultimately, if any quarterback in the NFL gets hurt, there's a very good shot that their backup is not going to come in and win games. Very rare. So is that a concern? I would say it's a concern. I would say the backup quarterback spot is still a concern. It's still one of those big concerns I have. Now, the second concern I have is defensive tackle. I expect a big year from Lee McNeil. I think the signing of Christian Covington could be a really, really underrated signing. I think Broderick Martin could be good in time. Will he be good this year? That's going to be the interesting thing to see in training camp. But ultimately, they still gave up a shit ton of yards last year on the ground. That is a big issue. And when you look at the NFC, one of the things you look at is all these teams that run the ball at a good pace. Dallas has a good running game. 49ers have a good running game. Philadelphia has a good running game. Giants have a pretty good running game. It's all Saquon, but that doesn't matter. The Bears have a good running game for the most part because we all know it's Justin Fields. The Packers have a good running game with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. There's a lot of good running games in the NFC. So you are going to go against some pretty good running backs like Josh Jacobs. You're going to go against, J.K. Dobbins, Lamar Jackson. So this is going to be an interesting time for the Detroit Lions because they need to be better on the rushing game because when you can stop the run, you can make teams one-dimensional. And with the secondary being totally revamped like it has, I think that if they are good at defending the run, they could be a really good team moving forward. I think if you could defend the run, potentially you go from being just a good team to a great team. And that's one of the things we need to monitor when we see this Detroit Lions team is, can they stop the run? The first 2 weeks are going to be really, really key because, you go against Kansas City and you go against Seattle. Those are two teams that, they don't have great running games, but, Seattle has Kenneth Walker. Patrick Mahomes on that side. He can open up the run game. They got some good players on that side. So first 2 games will be they'll be everything for the Detroit Lions. We'll see exactly where they're at, and like I said, you can have concerns going into the season of what could happen to the Detroit Lions. Ultimately, the backup quarterback is number 1. Defending the run is number 2. And number 3 is kind of a hidden one that I think a lot of people are glossing over to an extent. The Jameson Williams suspension was totally unprecedented. Obviously, we never seen a gambling suspension for a kid that gambled legally but made it in the wrong spot. Unbeknownst, that's such Lions luck. But anyways, the third concern I have is the depth at wide receiver. And we're going to get to really know what's going to happen in the first 6 games with this wide receiving core. Obviously, we know we're going to have St. Brown, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, Marvin Jones for the first 6 weeks, but who else is going to step up? That will be the question that I look at, because ultimately, you know that eventually over the season, hopefully not in the first 6 weeks, St. Brown might get a little dinged up, Khalif Raymond might get a little dinged up, Josh Reynolds might get a little dinged up, and then you're going down the line. Now, obviously, they added into that receiving group a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs who can catch passes out of the backfield. You have Sam Laporta who can catch passes up the middle from the tight end spot. But ultimately, the wide receiving core, besides St. Brown, besides Jameson Williams, who's going to miss the first 6 games, that's going to show a lot about this team, because when you get Jameson Williams back, I think he's going to hit the ground running. But ultimately, you're going to have injuries over the course of the year. So when you look at the Detroit Lions, like that's definitely a concern for me, because I think like a lot of people gloss over the wide receivers because of who we got at the top two, but we obviously know that James Williams won't be there to start the year. But when you look past game 6, wide receiving core looks pretty good. But when I look at like over the course of the year, there's injuries that occur. What's going to happen with this guy? What's going to happen with this guy? I don't see enough depth, and I'm looking for guys maybe from Antoine Green. Maybe they sign someone, but they need that wide receiver depth. And if they can get someone to step up to be that third wide receiver, or they trade for one, that could be huge. But those are my 3 concerns for this Detroit Lions team. I think you could look at this team and you could say that there's a lot to like. Like the secondary has got better, the linebacker core has gotten better. The defensive line, with the edge rushers, with James Houston, with Aiden Hutchinson, with Josh Pascal, with Charles Harris, with Romeo Okwara, has gotten better. The offensive line got better depth. The tight end has got better. There's a lot of places with the Detroit Lions that have gotten better. Ultimately, these 3 spots are going to be they could play a real big chance in this Detroit Lions season in 2023. And I know this is like Debbie Downer type bullshit, but when you look at the course of a year and you go over a course of NFL season, you have to look at the negatives and see, are they paralyzing? And when I look at these concerns, there's maybe one that could be the most paralyzing, that's not stopping the run. Obviously, you could go through a ton of injuries at wide receiver, and it doesn't matter about who you get in the bottom 3, 4, 5, 6 wide receivers. They're never going to replace the production of those top 2. So that's not something I'm really concerned about. Jared Goff getting hurt. I mean, if Jared Goff gets hurt, we're just screwed anyways. I mean, that's the reality. But I know that there's no viable option besides Teddy Bridgewater out there. And they drafted Hendon Hooker, so they're not going to go sign Teddy Bridgewater. So it's going to be interesting. The biggest concern that I would have out of those 3, though, would be the run game, the defensive run game. Because if you can stop people, you're gonna be golden. And if you allow people to run for yards, you're gonna be hurt. And that's gonna be what's gonna have to happen for the Detroit Lions. They're gonna have to stop the run. And I think with the secondary getting better, they're gonna be in a better position to stop the run. But I like where their head's at. But ultimately, these are the 3 things I'm going to be monitoring during the season, and we're gonna keep you all entertained on this channel with Detroit Lions news through the season. So keep in tune here, subscribe below, and we will keep you entertained with all the Detroit Lions news that you can imagine. It's gonna be a great season, and Rookies Report Wednesday. We will see you on the next video. Twin of us, Detroit.